Welcome, dear friend, to this gentle space we share tonight. As the world outside grows quiet and the day releases its hold on your shoulders, you've found your way here to rest your mind while discovering the extraordinary truths hidden within our everyday world. Perhaps you've had a long day, filled with countless tasks and endless thoughts. Maybe your mind is still racing with tomorrow's concerns or today's unfinished moments. Whatever brought you here, know that you've chosen the perfect time to let go, to breathe deeply, and to allow yourself this peaceful journey through 100 fascinating revelations that will gently reshape how you see the world around us. As you settle into comfort, whether nestled in bed or resting in your favorite chair, let your breathing naturally slow and deepen. Feel the weight of your body growing pleasantly heavy, sinking into the softness beneath you. Tonight, we'll explore truths that many believe to be myths, uncovering the remarkable reality that surrounds us every day. These aren't just facts to memorize, but gentle revelations that will float through your consciousness like clouds across a peaceful sky, each one offering a moment of quiet wonder before drifting onward to make room for the next. If you find these calm explorations helping you unwind tonight, perhaps you might consider leaving a gentle like to help others discover this peaceful refuge. And if you'd like to join our growing community of nighttime learners and dreamers, the subscribe button awaits whenever you feel ready. We'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time paints your sky right now. Share in the comments below where you are and whether stars or sunlight grace your window. Your presence here creates a beautiful tapestry of connection across time zones and continents, reminding us all that somewhere, someone else is also choosing rest and wonder over worry. Let us begin our journey with a truth about the very ground beneath us. The Great Wall of China, that magnificent testament to human determination, cannot actually be seen from space with the naked eye, despite what countless classroom lessons may have suggested. This ancient structure, winding like a stone dragon across mountains and valleys for thousands of miles, becomes invisible to astronauts gazing down from the International Space Station without specialized equipment. The wall, typically only about 30 feet wide, simply dissolves into the texture of the Earth when viewed from such heights. Even from low Earth orbit, roughly 200 miles above our planet's surface, distinguishing this human marvel requires perfect conditions and keen knowledge of exactly where to look. What astronauts can see clearly, however, are the lights of our cities at night, glowing like scattered diamonds against the darkness, and the broad ribbons of our major highways cutting through landscapes. This revelation reminds us that sometimes our greatest achievements are most magnificent when witnessed from ground level, where we can touch their stones and walk their lengths, moving from ancient walls to ancient creatures. We discover that goldfish, those shimmering companions in countless homes, possess memories that extend far beyond the mythical 3 seconds often attributed to them. Scientific studies have revealed that these graceful swimmers can actually remember things for at least 3 months, with some research suggesting their memories might stretch even longer. Goldfish can be trained to navigate mazes, recognize different shapes and colors, respond to various sounds, and even distinguish between different human faces. They form social hierarchies within their aquatic communities, remember feeding schedules, and can be taught to swim through hoops or push small balls around their tanks. Some goldfish have demonstrated the ability to anticipate feeding times days in advance, gathering at their usual feeding spot before their caretaker even approaches. This remarkable memory allows them to build complex mental maps of their environment, avoid dangers they've encountered before, and develop preferences for certain areas of their habitat. When we peer into a goldfish bowl, we're not observing a creature trapped in an endless loop of forgetting, but rather a small consciousness carrying its own collection of experiences and memories through the water. As we drift deeper into the realm of misunderstood creatures, consider the bat, wrapped in its leathery wings and surrounded by misconception. Bats are not blind, as the old saying, blind as a bat, would have us believe. In fact, all 1,200 species of bats can see, and many possess vision that rivals or exceeds our own, particularly in low-light conditions. The larger fruit bats, also known as flying foxes, have enormous eyes perfectly adapted for spotting ripe fruits hanging from branches in the dim twilight. Even the smaller, insect-eating bats that rely primarily on echolocation have functional eyes that help them navigate during dusk and dawn. Their echolocation ability, that miraculous biological sonar system, doesn't replace vision, but rather complements it, creating a rich, multidimensional perception of their world. These remarkable mammals can see ultraviolet light patterns invisible to human eyes, helping them locate flowers that bloom at night and navigate by celestial cues. Some species use their vision to spot the silhouettes of prey against the evening sky before engaging their echolocation for the final pursuit. When a bat flutters past your window at twilight, it sees you perhaps more clearly than you see it. Turning our gaze skyward, we encounter another persistent myth about our celestial companion. The moon does not have a permanently dark side, despite the Pink Floyd album and countless science fiction stories suggesting otherwise. What we call the dark side should more accurately be termed the far side, as it receives just as much sunlight as the side we see from Earth. Our moon rotates on its axis at exactly the same rate it orbits Earth, a phenomenon called tidal locking, which means we always see the same hemisphere facing us. But as the moon circles our planet, the sun illuminates different portions of its surface in the cycle we observe as lunar phases. When we see a new moon, the far side basks in full sunlight. During a full moon, when the near side glows bright in our night sky, the far side experiences its own version of night. This cosmic dance ensures that over the course of a lunar month, every crater, mountain, and valley on the moon's surface experiences both brilliant sunlight and deep shadow. The far side remained mysterious to humanity until 1959, when a Soviet spacecraft first photographed it, revealing a landscape more heavily cratered than the familiar near side. In the depth of our oceans lives a creature whose blood carries a surprising truth. Lobsters do not have blue blood, as many believe, nor do they have red blood like mammals. Instead, their blood appears as a clear, slightly grayish fluid when inside their bodies. However, when exposed to oxygen, this fluid turns a striking blue color due to the presence of hemocyanin, a copper-based protein that carries oxygen through their system. This differs from our iron-based hemoglobin, which gives our blood its red color. The hemocyanin in lobster blood actually makes their oxygen transport system more efficient in cold, low-oxygen environments of the deep ocean. This same blue blood chemistry is shared by spiders, octopi, squid, and many other arthropods and mollusks. The color intensity varies with the oxygen content, becoming more vivid blue when fully oxygenated and fading to almost colorless when depleted. This remarkable adaptation has existed for hundreds of millions of years, predating the evolution of red blood invertebrates. When we crack open a lobster at dinner, we rarely think about the elegant chemistry that once pumped through its body. Lightning, that spectacular display of nature's raw power, does indeed strike the same place twice, contrary to the reassuring old adage. In fact, lightning has a marked preference for striking the same locations repeatedly, especially tall, pointed, isolated objects that provide the easiest path for electrical discharge. The Empire State Building in New York City is struck by lightning approximately 25 times per year, with some powerful storms delivering multiple strikes within minutes. The Willis Tower in Chicago, the CN Tower in Toronto, and virtually every tall structure around the world become lightning magnets during storms. Even in nature, the tallest tree in a forest often bears scars from multiple strikes over its lifetime. Some mountain peaks are struck so frequently that the rock shows signs of repeated melting and reformation. This tendency for repeated strikes makes sense when we understand that lightning seeks the path of least resistance from cloud to ground, and once a channel is established, subsequent strikes often follow the same route. Professional lightning photographers often return to the same locations because they know certain spots attract strike after strike. Your tongue, that remarkable organ that allows you to taste the sweetness of honey and the tang of lemon, does not actually have distinct zones dedicated to different tastes. The familiar tongue map that adorned classroom walls for decades, showing sweet at the tip, salty and sour on the sides, and bitter at the back, represents one of the most persistent myths in biology. This misconception originated from a misinterpretation of a German research paper from 1901, which merely noted slight differences in sensitivity thresholds across the tongue's surface. In reality, taste buds capable of detecting all 5 basic tastes, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami, are distributed throughout your tongue, as well as on the roof of your mouth, inside your cheeks, and even in your throat. Each taste bud contains 50 to 100 taste receptor cells, and each of these cells can respond to multiple taste qualities. Modern molecular biology has identified specific receptor proteins for each taste, and these are found everywhere taste buds exist. You can easily test this yourself by placing a drop of lemon juice or a grain of sugar on different parts of your tongue. You'll taste them wherever they land. Vikings, those legendary Norse explorers and warriors who sailed the North Atlantic 1,000 years ago, did not wear horned helmets into battle or during their voyages. This enduring image, so deeply embedded in popular culture, actually originated in the 19th century when Scandinavian artists and costume designers created romanticized versions of Viking attire for operas and theatrical productions. Real Viking helmets, the few that have survived and been discovered by archaeologists, were practical pieces of armor, typically simple rounded or conical caps made of iron, sometimes with a nose guard or faceplate for additional protection. Horns would have been dangerously impractical in battle, easily caught by enemy weapons or tangled in ship rigging. The Vikings were skilled craftsmen and pragmatic warriors who valued functionality over theatrical appearance. They did wear elaborate jewelry and carefully groomed their hair and beards, taking pride in their appearance. But their battle gear was designed for survival, not show. The horned helmet myth has proven remarkably persistent, appearing on everything from sports team logos to cartoon characters, forever linking Vikings with an accessory they never actually wore. Different parts of your tongue working as specialized taste detectors isn't the only myth about our bodies we've carried through time. The notion that we only use 10% of our brains represents perhaps one of the most widespread misconceptions about human potential. Modern brain imaging technologies, including functional magnetic resonance imaging and positron emission tomography scans, clearly demonstrate that we use virtually every part of our brain, even during simple tasks. When you're resting quietly, supposedly using minimal brain power, your brain still consumes about 20% of your body's total energy, powering billions of neurons, maintaining your breathing, heartbeat, temperature regulation, and countless other vital functions. Different regions activate for different activities, but over the course of a typical day, you engage nearly every area of your brain. Even during sleep, your brain remains remarkably active, consolidating memories, clearing metabolic waste, and generating the complex narratives we experience as dreams. Damage to any part of the brain, no matter how small, typically results in noticeable effects, which wouldn't be the case if 90% lay dormant. This myth perhaps persists because it offers the tantalizing possibility of untapped potential. But the truth is equally remarkable, that our brains are incredibly efficient organs using all available neural real estate. As we explore the myths surrounding our planet's creatures, we discover that mother birds will not abandon their babies if humans touch them. This well-intentioned warning, passed down through generations to protect baby birds from curious children, lacks any scientific foundation. Most birds have a relatively poor sense of smell and wouldn't detect human scent on their young. The few birds that do possess a keen sense of smell, like vultures and some seabirds, use it primarily for finding food, not for recognizing their offspring. Parent birds are powerfully driven by instinct to care for their young and won't abandon them simply because of an unfamiliar scent. In fact, birds regularly return to nests that have been disturbed by predators, storms, or human activity, as long as the babies remain alive. Wildlife rehabilitators routinely handle baby birds and successfully return them to their nests without any rejection from the parents. However, the myth serves a useful purpose in discouraging people from unnecessarily handling wild birds, which can cause stress to both babies and parents, and in some cases might attract predators to the nest location. The idea that sharks must keep swimming to stay alive applies to some species, but not to all of these ancient ocean predators. Many shark species, including nurse sharks, whale sharks, and carpet sharks, can actively pump water over their gills while remaining perfectly still, resting on the ocean floor for hours at a time. These bottom-dwelling species have evolved spiracles, special openings behind their eyes that allow them to draw in water even when their mouths are buried in sand while hunting for buried prey. The sharks that must keep moving, like great whites, makos, and whale sharks, when actively feeding, practice what's called ram ventilation, where forward motion forces water through their mouths and over their gills. But even these perpetual swimmers have been observed in underwater caves where currents naturally flow water over their gills, allowing them to remain motionless while still breathing. Some species can switch between active pumping and ram ventilation, depending on their activity level and circumstances. This flexibility in breathing methods has helped sharks survive for over 400 million years, long before dinosaurs walked the earth. Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor who once controlled much of Europe, was not actually short for his era, standing at approximately 5 feet 6 inches in modern measurements. The confusion arose from differences between French and English measuring systems of the time and from effective British propaganda that portrayed him as a tiny, temperamental figure to diminish his threatening presence. In French units, he measured 5 feet 2 inches, but French inches were longer than English inches. When converted properly, Napoleon stood slightly above average height for a Frenchman of his generation. His nickname, Le Petit Caporal, or the Little Corporal, referred not to his physical stature, but to his habit of personally sighting cannons, a duty typically performed by corporals, and his camaraderie with common soldiers. He often surrounded himself with tall, imposing guards, which may have created an optical illusion of shortness. Contemporary descriptions from those who met him describe a man of average build with a commanding presence that filled any room he entered. The myth of his short stature has persisted so strongly that Napoleon complex entered our language to describe aggressive behavior supposedly compensating for short height. We continue our journey into the microscopic world where a fascinating truth awaits about our bacterial companions. The bacteria living in and on your body actually outnumber your human cells, though not by the 10-to-1 ratio often quoted. Recent careful counts suggest the ratio is closer to 1-to-1, with approximately 39 trillion bacterial cells and 30 trillion human cells in an average adult body. These microscopic partners aren't invaders, but essential collaborators in our survival. They help digest food, produce vitamins, train our immune systems, and protect us from harmful pathogens. Your gut bacteria influence your mood, your cravings, and even your behavior through complex chemical communications with your brain. Every person carries a unique bacterial signature, a microbiome as individual as a fingerprint, shaped by diet, environment, genetics, and life experiences. When you take antibiotics, you temporarily devastate these bacterial communities, which is why digestive issues often follow such treatments. Some researchers now consider the human microbiome to be an additional organ system, as vital to our health as our heart or liver. If you're finding yourself drifting into that peaceful space between waking and sleeping, that's perfectly wonderful. These gentle explorations are meant to accompany you, whether fully aware or floating in that dreamy in-between. If you're enjoying this calm journey through surprising truths, consider leaving a quiet like to help others discover this restful refuge too. Moving our attention to one of history's most celebrated thinkers, we find that Albert Einstein did not fail mathematics in school, despite this tale being told to encourage struggling students for generations. School records from his childhood clearly show that Einstein excelled in math and physics from an early age. By age 12, he had taught himself algebra and geometry, and by 15, he had mastered differential and integral calculus, well before most students even encounter these subjects. The confusion may stem from a change in the Swiss grading system. When Einstein attended school in Switzerland, the grading scale was reversed, with 6 being the highest mark rather than 1. Someone looking at his grades without understanding this reversal might mistakenly think he had failed. Einstein himself once responded to this myth by saying, "Before I was 15, I had mastered differential and integral calculus." What Einstein did struggle with was rigid authoritarian teaching methods and rote memorization of non-scientific subjects. His challenges were with educational systems that discouraged questioning and creative thinking, not with mathematics itself. The idea that hair and fingernails continue growing after death has haunted our imaginations for centuries, contributing to vampire myths and ghost stories. In reality, this appearance of growth results from the body's soft tissues dehydrating and shrinking after death, pulling back from the hair and nails to make them appear longer. Hair and nail growth requires active metabolic processes, including energy production, protein synthesis, and cell division, all of which cease when the heart stops beating and oxygen no longer reaches the tissues. The cells responsible for hair and nail growth are among the first to die when deprived of oxygen and nutrients. What observers have noticed in exhumed bodies is simply an optical illusion created by tissue recession. The skin around fingernails shrinks back, exposing more of the nail bed that was previously hidden. Similarly, facial skin tightens and pulls back, making stubble appear more prominent. This misunderstanding contributed to historical fears about the undead and led to various burial practices designed to prevent the deceased from returning. Chameleons, those remarkable reptiles with independently moving eyes and grasping tails, do not actually change color primarily for camouflage, as commonly believed. While they can indeed alter their appearance dramatically, these color changes serve mainly as communication tools and temperature regulators rather than hiding mechanisms. A chameleon's color shifts reflect its emotional state, broadcasting messages about mood, aggression, submission, or mating readiness to other chameleons. Bright, vibrant colors often signal aggression or excitement, while darker colors might indicate stress, illness, or cold temperatures. Males display their most spectacular colors when competing for territory or courting females. Temperature regulation plays an equally important role. Chameleons turn darker to absorb more heat when cold, and lighter to reflect heat when warm. They accomplish these changes through specialized cells called chromatophores, containing different pigments, and beneath these, cells called iridophores that reflect light. By adjusting these cellular layers, chameleons can produce a stunning array of colors and patterns. Their natural coloration already provides excellent camouflage for their arboreal lifestyle, typically matching the browns and greens of their forest habitat without any active color change required. Humans do not have just 5 senses, though sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch are certainly the most obvious ones. Scientists have identified at least 9 senses, with some researchers arguing for as many as 21 distinct sensory systems. Beyond the traditional 5, we possess proprioception, the sense of where our body parts are in space, allowing you to touch your nose with your eyes closed. We have equilibrioception, our sense of balance maintained by fluid in our inner ears. Thermoception gives us the ability to sense temperature changes, distinct from touch. Nociception alerts us to pain through specialized receptors throughout our body. We can sense the passage of time through our circadian rhythms, detect magnetic fields to some degree, and sense internal states like hunger, thirst, and the need to breathe. Some people possess heightened abilities to sense barometric pressure changes, predicting weather shifts through bodily sensations. Our bodies constantly monitor blood oxygen levels, blood sugar, and numerous other internal conditions, adjusting our behavior and physiology accordingly. This rich sensory world extends far beyond the simple 5 we learned in elementary school. The notion that bulls become enraged by the color red represents one of our most colorful misconceptions about animal behavior. Bulls, like all cattle, are dichromats, meaning they can only distinguish between 2 colors, essentially seeing the world in shades of blue and yellow, similar to a red-green colorblind human. The red cape, traditionally used in bullfighting, called a muleta, could be purple, green, or yellow, and the bull would react identically. What triggers the bull's aggressive behavior is the movement of the cape, not its color. The threatening gestures of the matador, the stressful environment of the arena, and often deliberate provocation before the event all contribute to the bull's agitated state. Red was likely chosen for the cape because it masks bloodstains and creates dramatic visual appeal for human spectators. In experiments where bulls are presented with stationary flags of various colors, they show no particular interest in or aversion to red. Cattle in pastures peacefully graze among red flowers and ignore red farm equipment. The association between bulls and the color red has become so entrenched in our culture that it persists despite clear evidence to the contrary. Mount Everest, that colossal giant of the Himalayas, is not actually the tallest mountain on Earth when measured from base to peak. That distinction belongs to Mauna Kea in Hawaii, which rises over 33,000 feet from its base on the ocean floor, though only 13,800 feet stands above sea level. Everest claims the title of highest elevation above sea level at 29,032 feet, making it the point on Earth's surface closest to space, or so many believe. But even that's not quite accurate. Due to Earth's equatorial bulge, caused by our planet's rotation, Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador, despite being over 9,000 feet lower than Everest in elevation, actually extends about 7,000 feet farther from Earth's center. Chimborazo's peak is the furthest point from the center of our planet and technically the closest point to the stars. These distinctions remind us that perspective matters in how we measure and understand our world. Each mountain holds its own record, its own claim to greatness, depending on how we choose to define tallest or highest. The common household fly buzzing around your kitchen does not live for merely 24 hours. This persistent myth likely confuses houseflies with mayflies, some species of which do indeed live for just a day in their adult form. The common housefly typically lives for 20 to 30 days, with some surviving up to 2 months under ideal conditions. During their lifetime, female flies can lay up to 900 eggs in several batches. These eggs hatch into larvae within a day, spend about a week as maggots, then pupate for another 4 to 6 days before emerging as adult flies. In heated buildings with abundant food, flies can complete their entire life cycle in as little as 7 days, leading to rapid population explosions. Their relatively long adult life allows them to spread diseases effectively, as they have time to visit multiple contaminated and clean surfaces. The myth of the one-day fly perhaps makes these insects seem less threatening than they actually are. A single fly living for a month in your home represents hundreds of potential offspring and thousands of bacteria spreading landings. Cracking your knuckles, that satisfying pop that makes some people cringe, does not cause arthritis despite generations of parents warning children otherwise. The sound comes from bubbles forming and collapsing in the synovial fluid that lubricates your joints. When you stretch or bend your finger joints beyond their normal range, you increase the space between bones, causing dissolved gases in the synovial fluid to form bubbles. These bubbles collapse rapidly, creating the characteristic popping sound. Once cracked, the joint cannot be cracked again until the gases dissolve back into the fluid, typically taking about 20 minutes. A doctor named Donald Unger conducted an informal experiment on himself for over 60 years, cracking the knuckles on his left hand daily while leaving his right hand untouched. He found no difference in arthritis between his two hands. Multiple formal studies have confirmed that habitual knuckle cracking doesn't increase arthritis risk, though some research suggests it might slightly reduce grip strength or cause minor soft tissue swelling over many years of repeated cracking. The notion that you must wait 24 or 48 hours before reporting someone missing is not just wrong, but potentially dangerous. Police departments consistently emphasize that there is no mandatory waiting period to report a missing person, especially for children, elderly individuals, or anyone who might be in danger. This myth, perpetuated by countless television shows and movies for dramatic effect, has no basis in actual law enforcement policy. The first hours after someone goes missing are often the most critical for finding them safely. Immediate reporting allows police to issue alerts, check hospitals, review security footage that might soon be overwritten, and interview witnesses while memories remain fresh. Every situation is evaluated based on the circumstances, including the missing person's age, mental state, medical conditions, and whether the disappearance is out of character. A normally punctual person who doesn't show up for an important appointment might warrant immediate concern, while a teenager staying out past curfew might not. The persistence of this myth has likely delayed many missing person investigations. The full moon does not trigger increases in crime, emergency room visits, births, or psychiatric episodes, despite beliefs held by many police officers, nurses, and emergency workers. Numerous large-scale statistical studies examining decades of data have found no correlation between lunar phases and human behavior. The word lunacy derives from the Latin word for moon, reflecting ancient beliefs about lunar influence on mental health. But modern data tells a different story. When researchers account for factors like weekends, holidays, and weather patterns, any apparent lunar effect disappears. The persistence of this belief likely stems from confirmation bias, where people notice and remember events that confirm their expectations while forgetting those that don't. If you expect a full moon to bring chaos and it happens to be busy, you remember that night. Quiet full moon nights fade from memory. Some researchers suggest that before modern lighting, the full moon might have genuinely affected behavior by disrupting sleep patterns with its brightness. But this effect has vanished in our electrically illuminated world. Water does not drain in opposite directions in the northern and southern hemispheres due to the Coriolis effect, despite this being a popular demonstration at tourist sites along the equator. The Coriolis effect, caused by Earth's rotation, is indeed real and influences large-scale phenomena like hurricane rotation and ocean currents, but it's far too weak to affect water draining from your sink or toilet. The direction water spirals down a drain depends on the design of the basin, the direction water enters it, residual currents from filling, and any slight asymmetries in the drain's construction. To observe the Coriolis effect on draining water would require a perfectly still, symmetrical container, water that had been motionless for days, to eliminate all residual currents, and a drain so small that it would take hours to empty. Even then, the slightest air current or vibration would overwhelm the minute Coriolis influence. Those equator-crossing demonstrations, where water appears to drain differently on either side of a line, are simply tricks using basins designed to create the expected effect. Coffee does not dehydrate you, despite containing caffeine, a mild diuretic that increases urine production. While caffeine does have a slight diuretic effect, the water content in coffee more than compensates for any fluid lost through increased urination. Regular coffee drinkers develop a tolerance to caffeine's diuretic effects, experiencing even less fluid loss. Studies have shown that coffee contributes to daily fluid intake almost as effectively as water. The persistent myth likely arose because people noticed increased urination after drinking coffee and assumed this meant dehydration. In reality, you're simply processing the liquid you consumed, just as you would with any beverage. The only scenario where coffee might contribute to dehydration is if you drink excessive amounts, more than 5 cups rapidly, or if you're not accustomed to caffeine and drink strong coffee without any other fluids. For most people enjoying their morning cup or two, coffee actually helps meet daily hydration needs while providing its welcomed wake-up effect. Carrots, while nutritious vegetables rich in beta-carotene, do not actually improve eyesight beyond normal vision or allow you to see in the dark. This myth originated as deliberate wartime propaganda during World War II. The British Royal Air Force spread stories that their pilots' exceptional night-flying abilities came from eating lots of carrots, when in fact they were using newly developed radar technology they wanted to keep secret from the Germans. The propaganda campaign was so successful that it embedded itself in popular culture worldwide. Carrots do contain vitamin A precursors essential for maintaining healthy vision, and severe vitamin A deficiency can cause night blindness. But eating extra carrots won't enhance normal eyesight. Once your vitamin A needs are met, consuming more won't improve your vision further. The same nutrients found in carrots exist in many orange and green vegetables like sweet potatoes, spinach, and kale. The myth persists partly because it offers a simple dietary solution to vision problems, more appealing than accepting that most vision issues result from the shape of the eye or aging processes that vegetables cannot reverse. The Amazon rainforest, often called the lungs of the earth, does not actually produce 20% of the world's oxygen as commonly claimed. While the Amazon does produce enormous amounts of oxygen through photosynthesis during daylight hours, it consumes nearly all of that oxygen through respiration at night and through the decomposition of dead plant matter. The net oxygen contribution from the Amazon to Earth's atmosphere is essentially zero. The real lungs of the Earth are the oceans, specifically microscopic phytoplankton that produce about 50 to 80% of our planet's oxygen. These tiny marine plants, invisible to the naked eye, photosynthesize in the sunlit upper layers of the ocean, releasing oxygen that dissolves in seawater and eventually reaches the atmosphere. The Amazon's true value lies not in oxygen production, but in its role as a massive carbon sink, its influence on global weather patterns, and its incredible biodiversity, hosting perhaps 10% of all species on Earth. The rainforest recycles moisture, generating rain that falls far beyond its borders, and helps regulate global temperature through its absorption of solar energy. Glass in medieval cathedral windows is not thicker at the bottom because it has flowed downward over centuries. Glass, even at room temperature, is actually a solid, not a liquid. The myth of flowing glass arose from observations of old windows that are indeed often thicker at one edge, but this results from the manufacturing process of the time, not from centuries of gradual flow. Medieval glassmakers created window panes by spinning molten glass into flat discs, which naturally produced glass of varying thickness. When installing these panes, craftsmen typically placed the heavier, thicker edge at the bottom for stability. Modern calculations show that for glass to flow noticeably at room temperature would require a time span longer than the age of the universe. Some antique telescopes use lenses that are hundreds of years old and show no distortion from flow, despite requiring precise shapes to function. If glass truly flowed over centuries, these delicate instruments would have long ago become useless. The enduring appeal of this myth perhaps lies in its suggestion that even apparently solid things are secretly fluid, changing imperceptibly over vast stretches of time. Ostriches do not bury their heads in sand when threatened, a behavior that would quickly lead to their extinction if it were true. This myth likely originated from observations of ostriches feeding or tending to their nests. These massive birds dig shallow nests in the ground for their eggs, and when they lower their heads to turn the eggs or arrange the nest, from a distance it might appear that their heads have disappeared into the earth. When faced with danger, ostriches employ far more effective strategies. They can run at speeds up to 43 miles per hour, maintaining this pace for extended periods to outrun most predators. Their powerful legs can deliver kicks strong enough to kill a lion. If escape isn't possible, ostriches will lie flat against the ground with their necks extended, using their coloration to blend with the sandy landscape. Their excellent eyesight allows them to spot threats from great distances, usually avoiding danger before it gets close. The perpetuation of this myth has made ostriches symbolic of denial and willful ignorance, unfairly maligning these intelligent, well-adapted birds. The human tongue can detect more than just 4 or 5 basic tastes. Beyond sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami, scientists have identified receptors for other taste qualities. We can taste calcium, which produces a chalky, bitter sensation. We have receptors for metallic tastes, explaining why blood tastes distinctly of iron. There's growing evidence for a fatty taste receptor that responds to lipids, distinct from texture sensations. Some researchers propose that we can taste carbon dioxide, creating the tingling sensation in carbonated beverages. Starchy foods may trigger their own taste receptors, explaining why bread and pasta have a subtle taste, even without seasoning. The sensation of spiciness from chili peppers isn't technically a taste, but a pain response triggered by capsaicin binding to temperature receptors, making your mouth feel literally hot. Similarly, the coolness of mint comes from menthol triggering cold receptors. These discoveries reveal that our sense of taste is far more complex and sophisticated than the simple taste map we learned in school, constantly providing rich information about the chemical composition of everything we put in our mouths. Shaving does not make hair grow back thicker, darker, or faster, though millions of people worldwide believe this to be true. When you shave, you're cutting hair at its thickest point, the shaft, creating a blunt tip that feels coarser than the naturally tapered end of unshaved hair. This blunt edge can make regrowth appear darker and feel stubbier, but the hair itself hasn't changed. Hair thickness, color, and growth rate are determined by genetics and hormones, not by cutting. The follicles beneath your skin that produce hair are unaffected by what happens to the hair shaft above the surface. If shaving truly made hair thicker, balding men could simply shave their thinning areas to restore full heads of hair. The myth persists because the timing of first shaving often coincides with puberty, when hormonal changes are naturally causing hair to become thicker and darker anyway. Young people attribute these natural changes to their new shaving routine rather than to their maturing bodies. Waxing or plucking, which remove hair from the root, can eventually damage follicles and reduce hair growth, but shaving never will. Lightning does not travel from the ground up to the clouds, though high-speed cameras reveal something even more fascinating about how lightning actually forms. The visible lightning bolt we see is actually the return stroke, but the process begins with an invisible stepped leader descending from the cloud in a zigzag pattern, creating a conductive channel of ionized air. As this leader approaches the ground, it triggers upward streamers from tall objects or pointed surfaces. When a downward leader connects with an upward streamer, usually about 100 feet above ground, it completes the circuit. The return stroke then races back up this established channel at about 1/3 the speed of light, creating the brilliant flash we perceive as lightning. This upward return stroke is so bright and fast that our eyes cannot distinguish it from a downward strike. The entire process repeats several times in microseconds, creating the flickering effect of lightning. So while the visible light does travel upward, the initial electrical breakdown path moves downward. This bidirectional process helps explain why lightning appears to branch and why the same channel often carries multiple strikes. Sunflowers do not track the sun across the sky throughout their entire lives. Young sunflowers do exhibit heliotropism, following the sun from east to west during the day and reorienting eastward overnight. But this behavior stops once they mature. The tracking motion in young plants results from uneven growth rates. The eastern side of the stem grows faster during the day, bending the flower westward. Then the western side grows faster at night, returning it eastward. This daily movement helps young sunflowers grow faster by maximizing light exposure for photosynthesis. Once sunflowers bloom and mature, they stop tracking and generally face east permanently. This eastward orientation attracts more pollinating insects as the flowers warm up faster in the morning sun, providing a cozy landing spot for bees. The heat also helps the flowers release more attractive scents. The image of fields of sunflowers all turning in unison to follow the sun is poetic but inaccurate. A field of mature sunflowers will all face roughly the same direction, creating a beautiful but static display. Alcohol does not warm your body, despite the warm sensation it creates. That feeling of warmth comes from alcohol dilating blood vessels near your skin's surface, bringing warm blood closer to your skin and creating a flushing sensation. This actually causes your body to lose heat more rapidly to the environment, lowering your core temperature. Alcohol also suppresses your body's natural shivering response, eliminating one of your primary defenses against cold. This dangerous combination has contributed to many cases of hypothermia, as intoxicated people feel warm while their body temperature drops dangerously low. In cold climates, the tradition of drinking alcohol for warmth has likely cost many lives. The myth persists because the immediate sensation is genuinely warming, and by the time core temperature drops, judgment may be too impaired to recognize the danger. Search and rescue teams often find hypothermia victims who've removed their clothing, a phenomenon called paradoxical undressing, sometimes triggered by alcohol's false warming sensation, combined with confusion from hypothermia. The notion that you should feed a cold and starve a fever has no medical basis and might actually harm recovery from either illness. This saying likely originated from the medieval belief that colds were caused by low body temperature and fevers by high temperature, requiring opposite treatments. In reality, both colds and fevers require adequate nutrition and hydration to support your immune system's fight against infection. During any illness, your body needs extra energy to produce immune cells, antibodies, and inflammatory compounds. Fasting during a fever deprives your body of essential nutrients when it needs them most. The slight decrease in appetite during illness is natural, but you should still eat nutritious foods as tolerated. Staying hydrated is particularly crucial during fever, as elevated temperature increases fluid loss through sweating and breathing. Chicken soup for colds has some scientific support, not as a cure, but because it provides fluids, electrolytes, and nutrients in an easily digestible form. The warm liquid can also help clear nasal passages and soothe throat irritation. Dogs do not age 7 human years for every calendar year, though this simple formula has been repeated for generations. The 7-year rule fails to account for the fact that dogs mature much faster than humans in their early years and that aging rates vary dramatically by breed and size. A 1-year-old dog has reached sexual maturity, equivalent to a human teenager, not a 7-year-old child. By age 2, most dogs are fully adult, comparable to a human in their mid-20s. After this rapid early development, aging slows but remains variable. Small breeds tend to live longer and age more slowly than large breeds. A Great Dane might be considered elderly at 6 years old, while a Chihuahua of the same age is middle-aged. Recent genetic research suggests a more accurate formula. Human age equals 16 times the natural logarithm of the dog's age plus 31. This means a 1-year-old dog is roughly equivalent to a 31-year-old human, while a 4-year-old dog compares to a 53-year-old human. Understanding true aging patterns helps veterinarians and owners provide appropriate care at each life stage. The color of your nasal mucus does not reliably indicate whether you have a bacterial or viral infection, despite many people using this as a guide for seeking antibiotics. Clear mucus can accompany bacterial infections, while viral infections can produce thick, colored mucus. The color changes result from white blood cells fighting infection and the enzymes they release, not from the type of pathogen present. Green mucus gets its color from an enzyme called myeloperoxidase, released by neutrophils, a type of white blood cell. These cells respond to both viral and bacterial infections. As mucus sits in your sinuses overnight, it can become thicker and more colored simply from dehydration and concentration, not infection progression. Many viral colds produce colored mucus for days as part of the normal healing process. Doctors diagnose bacterial infections requiring antibiotics based on symptom duration, severity, fever patterns, and physical examination, not mucus color. The overuse of antibiotics for viral infections with colored mucus has contributed to antibiotic resistance, making bacterial infections harder to treat when they do occur. You cannot see the Great Wall of China from space with the naked eye, but you can see something arguably more impressive: the collective impact of human agriculture. From the International Space Station, astronauts can clearly see the geometric patterns of large-scale farming, particularly the circular irrigation patterns in desert regions that look like green coins scattered across brown landscapes. These agricultural modifications cover far more area than any single structure and have fundamentally altered the appearance of entire continents. At night, our cities blaze with light visible from hundreds of miles up, creating a connect-the-dots map of human civilization. The Nile River Valley appears as a dark ribbon through the desert by day, but at night it glows as a bright snake of light from concentrated human settlements along its banks. The Amazon rainforest, invisible from orbit as a producer of oxygen, appears clearly as a vast deep green patch, distinguishing it from surrounding developed areas. We cannot catch colds from being cold or wet, despite mothers' warnings about going outside with wet hair. The common cold is caused by viruses, primarily rhinoviruses, which spread through respiratory droplets and contaminated surfaces, not through temperature exposure. The association between cold weather and illness exists not because cold causes infection, but because cold weather drives people indoors into close proximity, facilitating viral transmission. Additionally, cold, dry air can dry out nasal passages, making them slightly more vulnerable to viral invasion. And some research suggests rhinoviruses replicate more efficiently at the cooler temperatures found in the nose compared to core body temperature. But standing in the rain, going outside with wet hair, or sitting in a cold room cannot cause a cold unless you're exposed to the virus. The persistence of this myth might stem from the incubation period of colds. People often attribute their illness to recent cold exposure, not realizing they were infected days earlier in a warm, crowded space. Goldfish can grow much larger than the tiny fish circling in bowls, some reaching the size of footballs when released into ponds or lakes. The miniature goldfish in pet store tanks are actually stunted by their environment. Inadequate space with proper nutrition, goldfish commonly reach 12 inches and can live for decades. The oldest recorded goldfish lived 43 years. Their growth inhibition in small tanks results from stress hormones and accumulated waste products, not from their bodies naturally limiting size to match their container. This stunting is unhealthy, often leading to deformed organs and shortened lifespans. Released goldfish become ecological disasters in many waterways, growing large, outcompeting native species, and stirring up sediment that clouds water and destroys aquatic plant life. In the wild, these former pets reveal their carp heritage, becoming powerful, adaptable fish capable of surviving in conditions that would kill more delicate species. Touching a butterfly's wings does not doom it to death, though handling should still be avoided. The powdery substance that comes off on your fingers consists of tiny scales that give butterflies their colors and patterns. While losing some scales might affect the butterfly's ability to regulate temperature or avoid predators through camouflage, butterflies naturally lose scales throughout their lives. They can fly with significant wing damage, and many wild butterflies successfully survive with torn wings or missing scales from encounters with predators or obstacles. The oils from human hands pose a greater danger than scale loss, potentially affecting the butterfly's ability to smell and taste with its feet. The myth serves a useful purpose in protecting these delicate creatures from unnecessary handling, but a butterfly accidentally brushed by human fingers is not automatically condemned. Different areas of your brain do not control strictly separated functions like creativity on the right and logic on the left. While certain brain regions specialize in particular tasks, complex mental activities require intricate cooperation between both hemispheres. Language processing, often cited as a left brain function, actually involves areas throughout the brain. Creative activities engage logical processing centers for technique and structure, while analytical tasks require creative problem-solving approaches. Brain imaging shows that musicians use both hemispheres extensively. Mathematicians engage creative areas when working on novel problems, and artists activate logical regions when planning compositions. The myth of left-brained versus right-brained people oversimplifies the beautiful complexity of neural networks that constantly communicate across hemispheres through the corpus callosum, a bundle of over 200 million nerve fibers. Individual differences in thinking styles exist, but they result from complex patterns of whole brain connectivity, not hemisphere dominance. Sitting close to the television does not damage your eyes, though parents have warned children about this for generations. This myth originated in the 1960s when some television sets emitted excessive X-rays, but the problem was quickly corrected. Modern televisions emit no harmful radiation. Sitting close to screens can cause eye strain and fatigue because your eyes must work harder to focus at short distances. But these effects are temporary. Children often sit close to televisions because they can focus at closer distances more easily than adults, not because their eyes are being damaged. The same temporary eye strain occurs from reading books, yet we encourage children to read. Digital eye strain from computers and phones follows the same pattern, causing temporary discomfort, but no permanent damage. The 20-20-20 rule, looking at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds every 20 minutes, can help reduce eye strain from any close work. Bananas do not grow on trees, but on the world's largest herbs. What appears to be a trunk is actually a pseudostem made of tightly packed leaf bases that can grow 30 feet tall in less than a year. The true stem is underground, a rhizome from which new shoots emerge. Each tree flowers once, produces one bunch of bananas, then dies while new shoots grow to replace it. This herbaceous nature explains why banana plants can grow so quickly and why they're so vulnerable to strong winds. The bananas we eat are all clones, genetically identical plants propagated from cuttings because commercial bananas are seedless and cannot reproduce naturally. Every Cavendish banana in your grocery store is genetically identical to every other, making them vulnerable to disease. The previous commercial variety, the Gros Michel, was wiped out by fungus in the 1950s, forcing the industry to switch varieties. The same fate may await our current bananas as diseases evolve to attack these genetically uniform crops. Pterodactyls were not dinosaurs, despite often being grouped with them in popular culture. These flying reptiles belong to a separate group called pterosaurs, which evolved flight independently from birds. Pterosaurs were the first vertebrates to achieve powered flight, taking to the skies about 75 million years before birds. They ranged from sparrow-sized to the enormous Quetzalcoatlus with its 36-foot wingspan. Unlike dinosaurs, which include modern birds as living descendants, pterosaurs left no living relatives. They were warm-blooded, covered in hair-like filaments called pycnofibers, and some species walked on all fours, using their folded wings as front limbs. The term pterodactyl specifically refers to one genus of pterosaur, though it's commonly misused for all flying reptiles of that era. These remarkable creatures dominated the skies for over 160 million years before vanishing in the same extinction event that killed non-avian dinosaurs. Blood in your veins is not blue, despite the blue appearance of veins through pale skin. All blood in your body is varying shades of red. Oxygen-rich arterial blood appears bright scarlet, while oxygen-depleted venous blood looks dark maroon or crimson. Veins appear blue through skin due to how different wavelengths of light penetrate and reflect from tissue. Red light penetrates deeply and is absorbed by blood, while blue light reflects off the vein and surrounding tissue back to your eyes. This optical illusion depends on vein depth, skin tone, and lighting conditions. Medical diagrams showing blue veins and red arteries are color-coded for clarity, not anatomical accuracy. The myth persists partly because we rarely see venous blood. When we bleed from cuts, exposure to oxygen immediately brightens the blood. During blood donation or medical procedures, where venous blood is collected in vacuum tubes, you can observe its true dark red color before oxygenation occurs. Breakfast is not necessarily the most important meal of the day for everyone, though this statement has been repeated as fact for decades. The phrase originated from marketing campaigns by cereal companies in the early 20th century, not from scientific research. Individual metabolism, lifestyle, and circadian rhythms vary greatly, making different eating patterns optimal for different people. Some thrive with early morning meals, while others function better with intermittent fasting. Studies on breakfast's importance show mixed results, with benefits depending on food quality and individual factors. Forcing yourself to eat when not hungry can disrupt natural appetite signals. Children and adolescents may benefit more from regular breakfast due to their growth needs and school schedules, but adults have more flexibility. The key lies not in when you eat, but in overall dietary quality and total nutritional intake. Cultural practices worldwide vary enormously, with some societies traditionally eating little in the morning while maintaining excellent health outcomes. Spicy foods do not cause stomach ulcers. In fact, capsaicin in chili peppers might actually protect against them. The vast majority of stomach ulcers result from infection by Helicobacter pylori bacteria or from long-term use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin and ibuprofen. This discovery earned the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2005, overturning decades of medical wisdom that blamed stress and spicy foods. Spicy foods can irritate existing ulcers, causing pain that reinforces the false connection. But they don't create the initial damage. Some research suggests capsaicin stimulates protective mucus production and blood flow in the stomach lining. Countries with traditionally spicy cuisines often have lower rates of stomach ulcers than those with blander diets. The myth persisted because ulcer pain often follows meals, leading sufferers to blame the food rather than underlying infection. Modern treatment with antibiotics to eliminate H. pylori bacteria cures most ulcers permanently, something impossible when doctors simply advised bland diets. Reading in dim light does not permanently damage your eyes, though it might give you a headache. Your eyes adjust to low light by dilating pupils and relying more on rod cells, which detect brightness but not color. This adjustment takes effort, potentially causing eye strain, fatigue, and temporary blurred vision, but these effects disappear with rest. Throughout human history, people read by candlelight and firelight without higher rates of vision problems than we see today. The increase in myopia in modern populations correlates more with extended close-up work regardless of lighting, and possibly with reduced time outdoors where eyes focus on distant objects. Good lighting makes reading more comfortable and efficient, reducing the work your eyes must do. But struggling to read in poor light is like exercising any muscle, temporarily tiring, but not permanently harmful. Our eyes evolved to function across an enormous range of lighting conditions, from bright sunlight to dim moonlight. Waking a sleepwalker does not cause them harm, though they might be confused or disoriented. The danger in sleepwalking comes from the walking itself, not from being awakened. Sleepwalkers can injure themselves by falling, walking into objects, or even leaving their homes while unconscious. Gently guiding them back to bed is ideal, but if they're in danger, waking them is better than allowing injury. The myth likely arose because sleepwalkers often react with confusion or agitation when suddenly awakened in unexpected places, sometimes not recognizing where they are or who woke them. This startled response can be distressing to witness, but doesn't cause lasting harm. Sleepwalking occurs during deep, non-REM sleep, when the brain partially awakens enough to enable movement, but not full consciousness. Children sleepwalk more commonly than adults, usually outgrowing the behavior. Regular sleepwalkers benefit from safety measures like locked doors and windows, clear pathways, and sleeping on ground floors rather than from family members afraid to wake them. As we journey deeper into the mysteries of rest and consciousness, perhaps you too are finding that gentle space where learning meets dreaming. If these explorations are accompanying your journey towards sleep, that's perfectly wonderful. This knowledge will weave itself into your dreams in the most interesting ways. Muscle does not weigh more than fat. A pound of muscle weighs exactly the same as a pound of fat. 1 pound. The confusion stems from density differences. Muscle tissue is about 18% denser than fat tissue, meaning a pound of muscle takes up less space than a pound of fat. This is why people can look smaller and more toned while maintaining the same weight through exercise that builds muscle and reduces fat. A cup of muscle weighs more than a cup of fat, just as a cup of iron weighs more than a cup of feathers. The practical result is that muscular people often weigh more than they appear, while those with higher body fat percentages might weigh less than expected for their size. This density difference explains why body mass index alone poorly indicates health, as it cannot distinguish between muscle and fat weight. Athletes often register as overweight or obese by BMI standards, despite having low body fat percentages. The Amazon River, despite being the largest river by volume, discharging more water into the Atlantic Ocean than the next 7 largest rivers combined, is not the longest river in the world. That title belongs to the Nile River in Africa, stretching approximately 4,132 miles from its source to the Mediterranean Sea, though recent expeditions suggest the Amazon might be closer in length than previously thought, with some measurements putting it within a few miles of the Nile. The debate continues because determining a river's true source can be surprisingly complex, involving seasonal streams, underground connections, and disputes over which tributaries to include. The Amazon's vast network drains 40% of the South American continent, carrying more water than any other river system, enough to fill Lake Ontario in just 3 hours. Its mouth spans over 200 miles wide, and its fresh water pushes so far into the Atlantic that early sailors could drink fresh water from the ocean while still out of sight of land. Your fingernails and toenails do not continue growing from the tips, but from the nail matrix hidden beneath your skin at the base of each nail. The visible nail consists of dead, hardened cells pushed forward by new growth from the matrix. This is why injuries to the nail bed can cause permanent changes to nail growth, while damage to the nail tip simply grows out over time. Nails grow at different rates, with fingernails growing about 3 millimeters per month, roughly 3 times faster than toenails. Your dominant hand's nails grow slightly faster due to increased blood flow from more frequent use. Nails grow faster in summer than winter, during pregnancy, and in younger people. The myth that nails grow from the tip might arise from observing nail polish or injuries gradually moving toward the edge. But this movement results from new growth pushing old nail forward, like a very slow conveyor belt of keratin. Diamonds are not formed from coal under pressure, despite this transformation appearing in countless educational materials. Most diamonds formed billions of years before the first land plants existed that would eventually become coal. Diamonds crystallize from carbon, deep within Earth's mantle, about 90 miles below the surface, under extreme temperatures around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and pressures 50,000 times greater than at sea level. These conditions exist far deeper than coal deposits, which form from compressed plant matter in the Earth's crust. The carbon in diamonds comes from primitive carbon that has been part of Earth since its formation, or from organic carbon subducted into the mantle through plate tectonics. Diamonds reach the surface through violent volcanic eruptions of a special magma called kimberlite that originates deep in the mantle and rockets upward at speeds that can exceed the speed of sound, carrying diamonds along for the ride. Coal, subjected to high pressure, might produce graphite, but it lacks the precise conditions needed for diamond formation. Evolution does not progress toward greater complexity or improvement, despite our tendency to view it as a ladder leading to more advanced forms. Evolution simply favors whatever traits help organisms survive and reproduce in their current environment, which can mean becoming simpler. Many parasites have evolved from complex free-living ancestors to simplified forms that rely on hosts for functions they once performed themselves. Cavefish have lost their eyes, snakes their legs, and whales their hind limbs because these features offered no advantage in their environments. Bacteria, the simplest organisms, have thrived for billions of years without becoming more complex, dominating Earth's biosphere in both numbers and total mass. Humans are not evolution's goal or endpoint, but simply one of millions of current experiments in survival. The perception of evolutionary progress stems from our bias toward complexity and intelligence, traits we value because we possess them. In reality, evolution is more like a spreading bush with countless branches exploring different strategies, not a ladder with humans at the top. Antibiotics do not cure viral infections like colds or flu, yet millions of prescriptions are written annually for exactly this purpose. Antibiotics target specific structures and processes in bacterial cells that don't exist in viruses, which are fundamentally different forms of life, if viruses can even be called alive. Viruses consist of genetic material wrapped in protein, hijacking host cells to reproduce, while bacteria are complete cells capable of independent life. Taking antibiotics for viral infections not only fails to help, but contributes to antibiotic resistance, one of the greatest threats to modern medicine. Each unnecessary antibiotic use gives bacteria opportunities to evolve resistance, creating superbugs that no longer respond to treatment. Some viral infections lead to secondary bacterial infections that do require antibiotics, but doctors must carefully distinguish between these situations. The similarity of symptoms between viral and bacterial infections, combined with patient pressure for treatment, perpetuates inappropriate antibiotic use. Your body's immune system, given time and support through rest and hydration, effectively eliminates most viral infections without any medication. Chewing gum does not take 7 years to digest if swallowed, though it does pass through your digestive system largely intact. Your body cannot break down the synthetic rubber base that gives gum its chewiness, but this indigestible portion travels through your digestive tract just like other indigestible items, typically passing within 1 to 3 days. The myth might persist because gum can cause problems if large amounts are swallowed regularly, potentially creating a mass that blocks the intestines, especially in children who also swallow other indigestible objects. But a single piece of gum, or even occasional pieces, pass through harmlessly. Ancient peoples chewed tree resins that were similarly indigestible without apparent harm. Your digestive system routinely handles indigestible materials like fiber, which also passes through largely unchanged while providing important digestive benefits. The 7-year figure has no scientific basis and might have originated as a parental deterrent to prevent children from swallowing gum. Sugar does not cause hyperactivity in children, despite nearly universal parental belief in the sugar rush phenomenon. Multiple controlled studies where children received either sugar or placebo, with neither children nor observers knowing which, found no difference in behavior, attention, or cognitive performance. The myth persists due to powerful expectation effects. Parents who believe their children consumed sugar report seeing hyperactive behavior even when the children actually received a sugar-free placebo. Situations where children eat lots of sugar, like birthday parties and holidays, naturally involve excitement and stimulation that would increase activity regardless of diet. Some studies found that parents' expectations actually change their own behavior, becoming more critical and hovering more when they believed their children had consumed sugar. The real concern with excess sugar consumption in children isn't hyperactivity, but obesity, tooth decay, and establishing poor dietary habits that persist into adulthood. Vaccines do not cause autism, a fear that has led to dangerous decreases in vaccination rates and subsequent outbreaks of preventable diseases. This myth originated from a fraudulent 1998 study that was later retracted when investigations revealed manipulated data and undisclosed financial conflicts of interest. The study's author lost his medical license for ethical violations. Hundreds of subsequent studies involving millions of children worldwide have found no link between vaccines and autism. The timing of autism diagnosis often coincides with childhood vaccinations, purely by coincidence, as both occur in early childhood. Autism signs actually appear before vaccination in many cases, but might not be recognized until the child is older. The preservative thimerosal, which contains mercury and was removed from childhood vaccines as a precaution despite no evidence of harm, was particularly feared, but autism rates continued rising after its removal, further disproving any connection. The consequences of vaccine avoidance include resurgences of measles, whooping cough, and other diseases that can cause death or permanent disability. We use far more than 10% of our muscles, even during simple activities. This variation of the brain myth suggests enormous untapped physical potential, but muscle physiology doesn't work this way. During any movement, some muscles contract while others relax to allow smooth, coordinated motion. Using all muscles simultaneously would result in paralysis as opposing muscle groups fought against each other. Elite athletes don't use more muscle fibers than average people. They use them more efficiently and have trained specific fibers to be stronger. In extreme situations, like the legendary mother lifting a car off her child, people don't suddenly access unused muscles, but rather override normal safety mechanisms that prevent injury from overexertion. Your body typically limits strength to protect muscles, tendons, and bones from damage. Adrenaline can temporarily bypass these limits, allowing extraordinary feats, but often resulting in injury afterward. The feeling that we could be stronger stems from real potential for improvement through training, not from unused muscle capacity. Handling toads does not cause warts, though many toad species do secrete defensive toxins that can irritate skin. Warts are caused by human papillomavirus, which spreads between people, not from animals. Toads have bumpy skin that might resemble warts, leading to the association, but these bumps are glands that produce toxins to deter predators. These secretions can cause mild irritation, burning sensations, or allergic reactions in sensitive individuals, reinforcing the belief that toads are dangerous to touch. Some tropical toad species produce potent toxins that can cause serious symptoms if ingested or if they contact mucous membranes. The myth might have served a useful purpose in preventing children from handling potentially toxic animals. Interestingly, some components of toad toxins have medical applications, including pain relief and potential cancer treatments. Frogs, often confused with toads, also don't cause warts, despite similar myths surrounding them. Earthquakes cannot be accurately predicted, despite numerous claims of successful prediction methods ranging from animal behavior to groundwater changes. Seismologists can identify areas at high risk for earthquakes based on fault lines and historical patterns, and they can calculate probabilities over long time periods. But pinpointing when an earthquake will strike remains impossible. Animals might sense the initial P waves that travel faster than the more destructive S waves, giving them seconds of warning. But this isn't prediction. Claims of earthquake prediction often rely on remembering hits and forgetting misses, or making predictions so vague they're meaningless. There will be a major earthquake in California sometime in the next 30 years is scientifically supported, but practically useless. The complexity of fault systems, with countless variables affecting when rock will finally slip, makes precise prediction extraordinarily difficult. Research continues into potential precursor signals, but no reliable short-term prediction method exists. This inability to predict earthquakes makes building codes and emergency preparedness even more critical in seismic zones. Swallowed watermelon seeds will not grow in your stomach, nor will any other seeds you might accidentally ingest. Your stomach's acidic environment, with a pH around 2, would kill most seeds before they could germinate. The absence of soil, proper temperature regulation, and most importantly, sunlight, makes your digestive system completely unsuitable for plant growth. Seeds need specific conditions to break dormancy and begin growing, conditions that simply don't exist inside the human body. The myth might persist because seeds often pass through the digestive system intact, visible in stool, suggesting they remain viable. Many plants actually evolved seeds that survive digestive systems, using animals to disperse them to new locations with a convenient fertilizer package. But surviving digestion and germinating are entirely different processes. The rare medical cases of plants growing inside humans involve inhaled seeds lodging in lungs where different conditions exist, not swallowed seeds in the digestive system. Rust does not cause tetanus, though the association is so strong that many people fear any contact with rusty metal. Tetanus is caused by bacteria called Clostridium tetani, which lives in soil, dust, and animal feces, not in rust itself. The bacteria form spores that can survive harsh conditions for years. These spores enter the body through wounds, particularly deep puncture wounds, where oxygen-poor conditions allow the bacteria to multiply and produce toxins. Rusty objects are often found outdoors where they've been exposed to soil containing tetanus spores, creating the association. A clean, rust-free nail from contaminated soil poses the same tetanus risk as a rusty one. Conversely, a sterile rusty object poses no tetanus risk at all. The depth of the wound matters more than what caused it. Shallow scratches rarely lead to tetanus because oxygen prevents bacterial growth. Tetanus vaccination provides excellent protection, but boosters are needed every 10 years. The myth's persistence might actually be beneficial, encouraging people to seek medical attention for wounds from dirty or rusty objects. Milk does not increase mucus production during colds, despite many people avoiding dairy when sick. Scientific studies where participants were infected with cold viruses and given either milk or soy milk disguised to taste identical found no difference in mucus production. The perception of increased mucus might result from milk's texture and how it temporarily coats the mouth and throat, creating a sensation similar to mucus. This coating sensation varies with milk's fat content, which might explain why some people report stronger effects from whole milk. Some individuals with milk allergies or lactose intolerance might experience real respiratory symptoms from dairy, but this isn't increased mucus from the cold. The myth persists across cultures, with traditional medicine systems often recommending avoiding dairy during respiratory illnesses. While milk doesn't increase mucus, warm liquids like tea or soup might help thin existing mucus, making them feel more soothing than cold milk during illness. Hair and fingernails do not continue growing after death, but this myth has inspired countless horror stories. After death, all cellular activity ceases, including the division of cells in hair follicles and nail matrices that produces growth. The appearance of growth results from dehydration of the body, causing skin to shrink and pull back from hair and nails, exposing more of what was already there. This retraction can reveal several millimeters of hair shaft and nail that were previously below the skin surface. Funeral preparation techniques that restore moisture to tissues can minimize this effect. The myth gained credibility from exhumations, where bodies appeared to have longer hair and nails than at burial. Historical accounts of corpses with apparently growing hair and nails contributed to vampire legends and fears about premature burial. Understanding the true cause helps dispel supernatural fears while highlighting how decomposition creates illusions that have frightened humanity for centuries. Piranhas do not strip large animals to bones in seconds despite their fearsome reputation and dramatic movie portrayals. These South American fish are actually quite skittish and primarily scavengers, feeding mostly on fish, insects, and plant matter. The famous feeding frenzies occur only under specific conditions, typically during dry seasons when fish are concentrated in shrinking pools and food is scarce. Theodore Roosevelt's sensationalized account of piranhas after his Brazilian expedition in 1913 helped establish their murderous reputation, but locals had starved the fish before demonstrating their feeding behavior for him. Most piranha species are actually solitary or form loose aggregations rather than hunting packs. They play an important ecological role, cleaning rivers of dead and dying animals. Humans regularly swim in piranha-inhabited waters without incident. When piranhas do bite humans, it's usually a single defensive nip at toes or fingers that resemble their normal prey. The myth of instantaneous skeletonization has made piranhas among the most feared yet misunderstood fish. Penguins do not mate for life as commonly believed, though some show remarkable loyalty to nesting sites, if not to partners. While many penguin species form seasonal pair bonds that might last multiple breeding seasons, DNA testing reveals frequent extra-pair mating and partner switching between seasons. Emperor penguins, often cited as paragons of monogamy, typically stay together for one breeding season, with divorce rates around 85%. The confusion might arise from penguins' elaborate courtship rituals and devoted co-parenting during breeding season. Partners take turns incubating eggs and hunting for food, displaying remarkable coordination and dedication. Some pairs do reunite for multiple seasons, but this represents convenience and breeding success rather than romantic attachment. Penguins returning to the same nesting site often repair simply because both partners return to a familiar location. The anthropomorphization of penguin relationships, reinforced by nature documentaries with romantic narratives, has created an idealized view that doesn't match biological reality. Elephants do not have graveyards where they go to die, though they do display remarkable behaviors around death that might have inspired this myth. Elephants show clear interest in elephant bones and corpses, investigating them with their trunks, sometimes carrying bones or tusks for long distances. They've been observed returning to locations where family members died, touching and examining the bones. These behaviors suggest some understanding of death and possibly mourning, but there's no evidence of specific locations where elephants intentionally go to die. The myth might have originated from finding multiple elephant skeletons in the same area, which more likely results from environmental factors like drought, where elephants gather at the last remaining water sources and some die there, or from poaching sites where multiple elephants were killed. Elderly elephants with worn teeth might congregate in areas with softer vegetation they can still eat, occasionally dying there naturally. These gatherings based on ecological needs, not an instinct to visit communal graveyards, explain skeleton concentrations. Brown eggs are not healthier or more natural than white eggs, despite often costing more at grocery stores. Shell color depends entirely on the hen's breed, with no relationship to nutritional value, taste, or how the chickens were raised. White-feathered chickens with white earlobes typically lay white eggs, while red or brown-feathered chickens with red earlobes lay brown eggs. Some breeds lay blue, green, or speckled eggs. The price difference often reflects that brown egg-laying breeds tend to be larger birds requiring more food, increasing production costs. Marketing has associated brown eggs with organic or free-range farming, but factory farms raise brown egg-laying hens in the same conditions as white egg layers. Nutritional differences between eggs result from the hen's diet and living conditions, not shell color. Pasture-raised hens with varied diets produce eggs with more omega-3 fatty acids and vitamins regardless of shell color. The persistent belief that brown means healthier might stem from associations with whole grain bread and brown rice, where color does indicate different processing. Dropped food does not become safe from contamination if picked up within 5 seconds. Bacteria transfer to food immediately upon contact with contaminated surfaces, though the amount increases with time. Studies show that moisture content matters more than timing. Wet foods pick up more bacteria instantly than dry foods. The type of surface also affects transfer rates, with smooth surfaces like tile transferring more bacteria than textured surfaces like carpet, though carpet harbors more bacteria overall. The bacterial load on the surface matters most. Food dropped on a recently cleaned kitchen floor might be safer than food sitting on a contaminated countertop for any duration. The 5-second rule might persist because most people have immune systems capable of handling small amounts of common bacteria, and we rarely get sick from eating dropped food. However, this depends entirely on what organisms are present. Dangerous pathogens like E. coli or Salmonella transfer instantly and can cause serious illness even in small amounts. Bats are not rodents, but belong to their own order, Chiroptera, more closely related to primates and carnivores than to rats or mice. This misclassification persisted in scientific literature until relatively recently, with bats sometimes called flying mice in various languages. Genetic analysis reveals that bats diverged from other mammals about 52 million years ago, evolving powered flight independently from birds and pterosaurs. Their wings are actually modified hands with elongated fingers supporting thin membranes of skin. Unlike rodents with continuously growing teeth requiring constant gnawing, bat teeth are specialized for their varied diets, from needle-sharp teeth in vampire bats to flat molars in fruit bats. Bats are the only mammals capable of true sustained flight, not just gliding. They comprise nearly 20% of all mammal species, with over 1,400 species worldwide. Their ecological importance as pollinators, seed dispersers, and insect controllers far exceeds that of rodents. Some tropical plants depend entirely on bats for pollination, including wild varieties of bananas, mangoes, and agave. Turkey meat does not make you particularly sleepy compared to other foods, though the drowsiness after Thanksgiving dinner is certainly real. Turkey contains tryptophan, an amino acid that the body converts to serotonin and melatonin, chemicals involved in sleep regulation. However, turkey has no more tryptophan than other poultry, and actually less than many cheeses. For tryptophan to effectively increase sleepiness, it must cross the blood-brain barrier, competing with other amino acids for transport. Eating protein actually reduces tryptophan's relative availability to the brain. The real culprits behind post-feast drowsiness are overeating, which diverts blood flow to digestion, alcohol consumption, and the heavy carbohydrates typical of holiday meals. Carbohydrates trigger insulin release, which removes competing amino acids from the bloodstream, potentially allowing more tryptophan into the brain. But this effect is modest compared to simple food coma from consuming thousands of calories in one sitting. The warm, relaxed atmosphere and break from routine probably contribute as much as any chemical effect. As our collection of revelations grows, you might notice your breathing has naturally slowed, your muscles have relaxed, and perhaps your eyelids have grown pleasantly heavy. There's no need to concentrate on every word. Let them flow through your awareness like a gentle stream. Seasons are not caused by Earth's changing distance from the Sun during its elliptical orbit. In fact, Earth is closest to the Sun in early January, during winter in the Northern Hemisphere. Seasons result from Earth's 23.5-degree axial tilt, which remains pointed in the same direction as Earth orbits the Sun. When the Northern Hemisphere tilts toward the Sun, it receives more direct sunlight and longer days, creating summer. Simultaneously, the Southern Hemisphere tilts away, experiencing winter. The intensity of sunlight matters more than distance. Sunlight striking at a low angle spreads over a larger area, delivering less energy per square foot. The difference in Earth-Sun distance between perihelion and aphelion is only about 3%, causing minimal temperature variation. If distance caused seasons, the entire planet would experience summer and winter simultaneously. The axial tilt also explains why polar regions experience extreme seasonal variations with months of continuous daylight or darkness, while equatorial regions have minimal seasonal change. Giving birth during a full moon is no more likely than during any other lunar phase, despite many maternity ward staff believing otherwise. Large-scale studies analyzing hundreds of thousands of births across decades find no correlation between lunar phases and birth rates. The myth persists through confirmation bias. Memorable busy nights during full moons stick in memory, while equally busy nights during other phases are forgotten. Hospital staffing records show no pattern of increased staff during full moons, which would occur if administrators recognized actual patterns. Some suggest the myth originated when humans lived under natural light, where full moon brightness might have affected sleep patterns and hormones. Modern artificial lighting eliminates any such effect. The moon's gravitational effect on humans is negligible. A mosquito landing on your arm exerts more gravitational force than the moon. While the moon influences ocean tides through its effect on the entire Earth, individual human bodies are too small to experience meaningful tidal forces. Forensic investigators cannot determine exact time of death from body temperature as precisely as television suggests. The oft-cited formula of body cooling at 1.5 degrees per hour assumes constant environmental conditions that rarely exist. Ambient temperature, humidity, air circulation, body size, clothing, and cause of death all affect cooling rates. Bodies cool faster in water than air, slower when clothed or covered, and at different rates in different body parts. Initial body temperature varies between individuals and can be elevated by infection, drugs, or physical activity before death. The cooling rate isn't linear. Bodies cool faster initially when the temperature difference with the environment is greatest. After reaching ambient temperature, body temperature provides no timing information. Investigators use multiple indicators, including rigor mortis, livor mortis, insect activity, and stomach contents. But even combining these methods produces time ranges of hours or days, not the precise determinations shown in crime dramas. Real forensic scientists express frustration at fictional portrayals creating unrealistic jury expectations. Alcohol does not kill brain cells in moderate drinkers, though chronic alcoholism can damage the brain through indirect mechanisms. The myth might stem from observing alcohol's obvious effects on coordination and judgment. Assuming such dramatic changes must involve cellular death. Studies examining the brains of deceased alcoholics versus non-drinkers found no difference in neuron density. What alcohol does is disrupt communication between neurons by affecting neurotransmitters and damaging dendrites, the branches neurons use to communicate. These effects are largely reversible with abstinence. Chronic alcoholism can cause brain damage through thiamine deficiency, liver disease affecting brain function, and increased risk of head injuries. Binge drinking can damage the hippocampus, affecting memory formation. The developing adolescent brain appears particularly vulnerable to alcohol's effects. Moderate alcohol consumption might actually protect against cognitive decline in older adults, though this remains controversial. The social acceptability of alcohol makes honest discussion of its risks challenging, with myths flowing in both directions. Meteorites are not hot when they land on Earth, despite movies showing them glowing and starting fires. While meteorites are heated to thousands of degrees by friction during atmospheric entry, this heating affects only the outer millimeters, which typically burn away. The interior remains at the near absolute zero temperature of space. The brief atmospheric passage, lasting seconds to minutes, doesn't provide enough time for heat to penetrate deeply into the rock. By the time meteorites slow to terminal velocity in the lower atmosphere, they've stopped producing heat and actually cool rapidly in the cold upper air. Most meteorites are cold to the touch when found, sometimes even frost-covered from condensation. The myth of hot meteorites might arise from their glowing appearance during entry, creating spectacular fireballs visible for hundreds of miles. The fusion crust, the thin melted layer on a meteorite's surface, does indicate the extreme heat of entry, but it cools within seconds of landing. Reports of hot meteorites often involve misidentified industrial slag or volcanic rocks. George Washington did not have wooden teeth, though his dental troubles and various dentures are well documented. Washington began losing teeth in his 20s and had only one natural tooth remaining at his presidential inauguration. His multiple sets of dentures were constructed from lead, gold, hippopotamus ivory, and human teeth, including teeth purchased from enslaved persons. a disturbing common practice among wealthy Americans of that era. Wooden teeth would have been impractical, deteriorating quickly in the mouth's moist environment. The myth might originate from the grainy appearance of aged ivory, which can resemble wood grain. Washington's dentures were uncomfortable and disfiguring, causing the facial distortion visible in portraits. They required constant maintenance and affected his speech, contributing to his reputation for being quiet and reserved. His dental problems influenced his diet and possibly his health, as chronic dental infections can affect overall health. The wooden teeth myth perhaps makes Washington seem more relatable and rustic than the reality of expensive dentures incorporating human teeth from enslaved people. Humans do not swallow 8 spiders per year in their sleep, a statistic that seems designed to horrify. This myth is often cited as an example of how false information spreads on the internet, ironically becoming a widely believed false fact itself. Spiders actively avoid large, warm-blooded creatures that could crush them. The vibrations from heartbeat and breathing warn spiders away from sleeping humans. A spider would need compelling reason to crawl into a mouth, which offers no prey and represents mortal danger. Sleeping people typically breathe through their noses, mouths closed. Even with mouths open, the warm, moist exhalations would deter spiders. Any spider contacting the sensitive tissues around the mouth would likely wake the sleeper before entering. While it's theoretically possible someone, somewhere, has swallowed a spider while sleeping, it would be an extraordinary event, not a regular occurrence. The persistence of this myth might reflect our deep arachnophobia, making the false statistic memorable and shareable despite its implausibility. Oxygenated blood is not the only thing that makes your face turn red when embarrassed. Blushing involves a unique emotional trigger of the sympathetic nervous system, the same system that typically causes blood vessels to constrict during stress. Paradoxically, embarrassment causes facial blood vessels to dilate through a mechanism scientists don't fully understand. The facial veins have different receptors than other veins, responding oppositely to the same chemical signals. Blushing appears to be uniquely human, serving as an involuntary social signal of apology or submission that might help maintain group cohesion. Some researchers suggest blushing evolved as an honest signal that cannot be faked, showing genuine emotional response that helps restore trust after social transgressions. The inability to control blushing makes it a reliable indicator of internal emotional states, possibly explaining why it persisted evolutionarily, despite seeming disadvantageous. The Bermuda Triangle does not have an unusually high number of disappearances compared to other heavily traveled ocean regions. Statistical analysis shows that the number of incidents in this area between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico is proportional to the heavy maritime traffic it receives. The Coast Guard doesn't recognize the Bermuda Triangle as particularly dangerous, and insurance companies don't charge higher premiums for vessels traveling through it. Many famous disappearances attributed to the triangle actually occurred outside its boundaries, with locations shifted in retellings to fit the narrative. Natural explanations exist for the genuine incidents, including sudden storms, equipment failure, human error, and the Gulf Stream's strong currents that can quickly disperse wreckage. The area does experience unique weather patterns, including waterspouts and sudden squalls, but these occur in many tropical regions. The myth persists through selective reporting that emphasizes mysterious disappearances while ignoring the thousands of daily, successful passages through the same waters. Touching a baby bird does not doom it to abandonment by its parents, though the myth serves to protect young wildlife from unnecessary human interference. Most birds have a relatively poor sense of smell and wouldn't detect human scent on their offspring. The powerful parental drive to care for young overwhelms any concerns about unfamiliar smells. Wildlife rehabilitators routinely handle baby birds and successfully reunite them with parents. However, repeated disturbance near nests can cause abandonment, not from scent, but from stress and perceived danger. The myth might actually protect wildlife by discouraging handling, as human intervention often does more harm than good. Well-meaning people frequently rescue fledglings that don't need help, as many young birds spend time on the ground while learning to fly, with parents continuing to feed them. The best response to finding a baby bird is usually to leave it alone, unless it's clearly injured or in immediate danger. Vikings did not wear horned helmets, despite this image being synonymous with Norse warriors in popular culture. Archaeological evidence shows Viking helmets were simple, practical designs of iron or leather, sometimes with face guards but never horns. Horned helmets would be disadvantageous in battle, easily caught by weapons or grappled by enemies. The myth originated in the 19th century when Romantic artists and Wagner's operas created fanciful Viking imagery. Ancient ceremonial helmets with horns existed in Northern Europe, but these predated Vikings by centuries and were never worn in combat. Vikings were actually quite vain about their appearance, bleaching their beards and using eyeliner, but their battle gear prioritized function. The horned helmet has become so entrenched that historically accurate depictions seem wrong to modern audiences, demonstrating how completely artistic invention can replace historical fact in collective memory. Lightning does indeed strike the same place twice, and actually shows preference for repeated strikes to prominent targets. The Empire State Building receives about 25 lightning strikes annually, with multiple strikes sometimes occurring during single storms. Any tall, isolated, conductive object becomes a preferred pathway for electrical discharge between clouds and ground. Lightning often follows the same channel for multiple strokes within a single flash, visible as flickering. The saying likely originated as metaphorical comfort after unlikely misfortune, not as meteorological fact. Understanding lightning's tendency for repeated strikes is crucial for safety, as sheltering under previously struck trees or near tall structures during storms increases danger rather than providing statistical protection. Professional photographers exploit this predictability, returning to locations known for frequent strikes to capture dramatic images. We do not lose most body heat through our heads, though this military myth influenced decades of cold weather advice. Heat loss from any body part is roughly proportional to its surface area, and heads represent only about 7 to 10% of body surface. The myth originated from flawed military studies where subjects wore Arctic survival suits but no hats, naturally losing disproportionate heat from their only exposed skin. In reality, you lose heat from whatever part is exposed to cold. The head does have less capacity for vasoconstriction than extremities, maintaining blood flow to protect the brain, which might contribute slightly to heat loss but doesn't make it exceptional. Wearing a hat helps in cold weather simply because it covers exposed skin, not because heads are special heat loss zones. The myth's persistence might stem from the dramatic subjective difference people feel when adding or removing hats, as facial cold receptors are particularly sensitive. Swimming after eating does not cause dangerous cramps leading to drowning, though this warning has kept countless children sitting poolside for arbitrary waiting periods. The theory suggested that digestion diverts blood from muscles, causing cramps, but the body maintains adequate blood flow for both digestion and moderate exercise. Competitive swimmers often eat during long events without ill effect, while vigorous swimming immediately after a large meal might cause discomfort. It doesn't create unusual drowning risk. The origin might trace to concerns about other post-meal swimming issues, like vomiting in water, or simply parents wanting uninterrupted relaxation after preparing meals. No documented cases exist of drowning caused by swimming after eating. The perpetuation of this myth might actually increase drowning risk by focusing on irrelevant factors while ignoring real dangers like alcohol consumption, overestimating swimming ability, and inadequate supervision. Mice do not particularly like cheese, preferring sweet foods like chocolate or peanut butter, and grains that comprise their natural diet. The cheese association likely arose from historical storage practices where cheese was aged in accessible locations, while grains were secured in containers. Mice would eat available cheese when preferred foods were protected, creating observational bias. In preference tests, mice consistently choose other foods over cheese. The myth persists through cultural repetition in cartoons, stories, and continued use of cheese in mousetraps, despite better bait options existing. Professional pest controllers rarely use cheese, knowing that peanut butter, chocolate, or bacon are far more effective. The image of mice-loving cheese has become so entrenched that it shapes how we think about these rodents, demonstrating how cultural myths can override direct observation. Your stomach does not take 7 years to digest chewing gum, though swallowed gum does pass through your digestive system largely intact. The synthetic rubber base that gives gum its chewiness resists digestive enzymes, but travels through your intestines like any indigestible material, typically passing within 1 to 3 days. The 7-year figure has no scientific basis, possibly originating as a parental deterrent. Your digestive system routinely handles indigestible materials like fiber, corn kernels, and seeds without difficulty. Problems only arise if large amounts of gum are swallowed regularly, potentially creating blockages, especially in children who might swallow other non-food items along with gum. Ancient peoples chewed tree resins similarly indigestible without apparent harm. The myth's persistence reflects parental concern about children's habits rather than actual medical danger. Black holes do not suck objects in like cosmic vacuum cleaners, but affect surrounding space through gravity, just like any massive object. If our sun were replaced with a black hole of equal mass, Earth would continue orbiting normally. We'd freeze from lack of sunlight, but wouldn't be pulled in. Objects must venture very close to black holes within the event horizon to become inescapably trapped. From a distance, black holes behave gravitationally like any other object of similar mass. The vacuum cleaner misconception might arise from the name black hole, suggesting emptiness that needs filling, or from dramatic artistic depictions showing matter spiraling inward. While matter falling toward the black holes does form spectacular accretion disks, this only occurs when objects pass close enough for tidal forces to disrupt them. Galaxies contain supermassive black holes at their centers, yet billions of stars orbit safely at distance, demonstrating that black holes don't inexorably consume everything nearby. Antibacterial soap is not more effective than regular soap for preventing illness in household settings. Both remove bacteria through mechanical action and rinsing rather than killing germs on contact. Antibacterial soaps require specific contact time to kill bacteria, typically longer than normal hand washing duration. Studies comparing households using antibacterial versus regular soap find no difference in infection rates. Overuse of antibacterial agents contributes to antibiotic resistance and may disrupt beneficial skin bacteria that protect against pathogens. Triclosan, a common antibacterial agent, has been banned from consumer soaps due to lack of proven benefit and potential hormone disruption. Regular soap remains highly effective because proper hand washing physically removes germs regardless of soap type. The antibacterial soap industry created consumer demand by implying regular soap is insufficient, despite lack of supporting evidence. In healthcare settings with vulnerable populations, antimicrobial products serve important purposes, but household use provides no measurable benefit. As we near the end of our journey through these 100 revelations, perhaps you found yourself drifting between waking and sleeping, catching some facts clearly, while others floated past like distant whispers. This is exactly as it should be. Knowledge absorbed in this peaceful state often stays with us in surprising ways, surfacing later when least expected. We've traveled together through misconceptions about our bodies, our planet, and the countless creatures that share it with us. We've discovered that goldfish remember, that bats can see, that lightning prefers familiar targets, and that diamonds don't come from coal. Each truth we've uncovered reminds us that reality often proves more fascinating than fiction, that the world operates on principles both more complex and more elegant than our simplified stories suggest. These 100 facts represent just droplets in an ocean of knowledge waiting to be explored. Tomorrow, the sun will rise on a world where pangolins walk with armor no knight ever wore, where glass sponges build cities from fiber optic cables, where Arctic squirrels freeze solid and live to tell the tale. Every moment of every day, impossible things happen all around us, things that would seem like magic if we hadn't slowly uncovered the scientific truths behind them. As you carry these revelations forward, whether into dreams tonight or conversations tomorrow, remember that questioning what we think we know opens doors to deeper understanding. The myths we've dissolved tonight were once accepted as readily as we accept new information today. Curiosity and skepticism, balanced with wonder and openness, guide us toward truth more reliably than passive acceptance ever could. Thank you for sharing this time of gentle discovery. Your presence here, whether fully awake or peacefully drifting, has made this exploration meaningful. If these quiet revelations have brought you comfort, knowledge, or simply a peaceful transition towards sleep, then our purpose has been fulfilled. If you found value in this journey through nature's surprises and science's corrections to our assumptions, perhaps you'll touch that like button one more time, a small gesture that helps others find their way to this calm space. And if you'd like to continue exploring with us, the subscribe button awaits, opening the door to future nights of gentle learning and peaceful discovery. May your dreams tonight be filled with the wonders we've explored, with Arctic ground squirrels awakening from impossible sleep, with dolphins dreaming with half their minds while swimming through star-reflected seas, with all the magnificent truth that surrounds us daily, waiting patiently to be discovered. Rest well, dear friend, knowing that tomorrow you'll wake to a world more amazing than our ancestors ever imagined, yet still holding mysteries enough for countless lifetimes of discovery. Sweet dreams, and thank you for joining us on this gentle journey through the extraordinary truth of our remarkable world.